Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this beautiful edition once again of the Manifest podcast, brought to you by the Manifest Tribe. And this is if this is the first time you are joining in any of our episodes, you need to tune in very seriously, connect very seriously, because something is about to hit you in a very big way. But before I go further, my name is Ugonna Emechebe, P. Hugo, also known as Pastor Hugo. And in the studio with me today, as usual, is Ifeanyi Okeke, PI. You're highly welcome. Could you just say a word to our listeners and our viewers?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me in the studio. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here with you in the studio. And everyone that is watching, you're welcome to this episode of Manifest. And as usual, find your favorite spot, sit down, bring out your writing materials, and get ready to be blown away. You're welcome to the podcast.
Amen. You're highly welcome. You're highly welcome. Good to have you here. Now, the Manifest Tribe and the Manifest podcast essentially is, designed to reestablish the profile of authentic masculinity. So, like we usually say, masculinity and manhood, as it was originally designed by God, is under aggravated assaults by the world. It's under all forms of attack, in order to undermine the purpose, the divine purpose for masculinity. And that's what we try to correct and bring to the fore in all the episodes that we present on the Manifest podcast. So I would advise that we all go back. If this is the first time you are listening to us, and even if it's not the first time, maybe you haven't caught up and covered all the other ones, all the other topics that we've had in the past. We have an archive with some very, very powerful topics that you would need to go back to and go through the list. If you're listening on Spotify, you would find them archived there. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel and go through the list. You're going to find so many things that will be of immense benefit to you. Now, we are continuing today from where we stopped the last time. We have been discussing over the past few weeks the issue of wounds, the 5 types of wounds that most men suffer. And when we talk about wounds, we had defined these wounds before. Usually, these wounds are not necessarily physical. Actually, they're not physical. They speak about an emotional and a spiritual deficit that most men, or a lot of men, have found themselves struggling through life with. This disadvantage, these valleys, if you will, need to be filled up in order for men, and especially the men who are passing through these issues or are having this hollowness in them, to become efficient fathers, effective husbands, and to manifest fully the dominion that God had called them to, and has called every one of us to function in. So we began speaking about the absent father wound, and we tackled that in the last 2 episodes. And so this week we are picking up on a second wound. And Pastor Ifeanyi, before we speak about that, could you please throw a little light on what these wounds are? If you would just speak to us a bit about what the wound is, and then possibly mention these wounds very quickly before we settle in on the one we're tackling today.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So basically, a wound is any unresolved issue where lack of closure adversely impacts and shapes the direction and the dynamics of a man's life. I want to take it again. It's a wound is any unresolved issue where lack of closure, adversely impacts and shapes the direction and the dynamics of a man's life. These things create men that are confused, that are struggling, And then they end up, instead of being the difference makers that God created them to be, they end up destroying the same people that God sent them to love, to nurture, to protect. And there are 5 basic wounds that create these men that are struggling. The first is the absent father wound. We discussed it in the last episode. The second is the overbearing mother wound, or the mommy boy wound, or as people say, the mother wound. you know. Then the third one is the Lone Ranger wound. The fourth one is
The
the
Lone
blind
Ranger wound. Yeah.
Lone Ranger, yes, the Lone
Yeah.
Ranger wound. The fourth one is the blind soul wound.
Mm.
And the fifth one is the heart depravity wound. you know. So these are the things that, and as we say, these are unresolved. As long as they are not resolved, just much like physical wounds, someone has a physical wound, and sometimes when wounds are healing, they
Mm.
form a scab,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
a scab
Mm.
over the wound,
Mm.
because the fibrin covers it and it looks like it has healed,
Mm.
but then maybe you are passing somewhere, your hand scratches a
Mm.
wall or a door,
Mm.
and then the
Mm.
scab peels off and it starts bleeding again. So
Mm.
some reactions that we get from men sometimes, it's really unconscious. They don't even know why
Mm.
they do it, but then they
Mm.
make sometimes, because there are different ways people deal with these things. Some people just carry it and push it somewhere and numb it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Inside their head, they are fine, without
Mm.
knowing that it's just like a scab covering it. And then something happens that triggers the memory of that thing, and then the man reacts maybe to a colleague, to a friend, to a wife, to the children,
Mm.
and just
Mm.
reacts, and you are
Mm.
taken aback,
Mm.
like, is this thing that happened that is creating, but you
Mm.
don't know that that thing triggered, it just opened a wound that has not been healed.
Mm.
So when
Mm.
we are discussing these things, is as you listen, you do a diagnosis,
Yeah.
of yourself, and see which of these things, issues in my life, has not been
Mm.
erased, because they don't disappear. That's the truth. These things don't disappear.
Mm. Mm.
You just
Mm.
like, wounds
Mm.
don't just
Mm.
disappear. They have to be
Mm.
given attention. They have to be
Mm.
treated,
Mm.
until they
Mm.
heal completely and the man
Mm.
is free.
Mm.
So the same thing, we're opening up these things,
Mm.
as you listen, the Holy Spirit is going to take you on a journey. Some of
Mm.
you, some things you thought you've forgotten when you were 6,
Mm.
when you were 7.
Mm.
He's going to reach inside, open it up,
Mm. Mm.
open that manhole you've covered, enter
Mm.
inside and pull out all the things inside
Mm.
of that place so that you can find complete healing. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So wounds cannot be outgrown.
No, no,
You
no, no.
don't
They can't be
outgrow
outgrown.
wounds.
They can't be
So
outgrown.
regardless of how much time
Has
you know
passed.
has passed, there has
Yes,
to
sir.
be an active healing process. If you
Yes, sir.
don't engage, just like a physical wound,
Yes,
if
sir.
you don't engage in proper nutrition, proper rest, you don't clean the wound properly and everything, the wound will not heal. And
Yes,
sometimes
sir.
even when the wound heals, sometimes it
Mm.
heals wrongly. There are people
Yeah.
who have had fractures who were not
Mm.
set properly, and they
Mm.
healed in that condition and ended up causing another problem. You
Yes,
see,
sir.
so that's also how it is with the soul.
Yes, sir.
And so like you rightly said, now we talked about scabs, scabs that cover wounds and give a false sense of healing.
Yes, sir.
So somebody takes a look at it, and because it's not bleeding at the moment, he assumes it's fine because he's been able to compartmentalize that issue and push it somewhere where
Yes, sir.
nobody can reach it.
Yes, sir.
He automatically assumes it's fine. And so, please, my brothers and even my sisters, everyone listening to us right now, I want to tell you this. A number of things we're going to be sharing in the course of this whole episodes, all these episodes, because of the titles that we're focusing on. We believe that the Holy Spirit is going to be, involved in excavating some things that were hidden. Now, to excavate those things, the process of excavating those things is not just to hurt you. It's not necessarily to hurt you, it's to heal you. But you see, in many cases, what will heal you will first hurt you. That's the way it works. All right? Because it will be addressing a deeper issue that is inside. And so please, I'd like you to just open your heart and receive what the balm of Gilead is going to be presenting to you, because it's the Holy Spirit that's bringing all this, right? Don't close your heart. Don't think that you want to be impervious to whatever it is that's happened, regardless of how hurtful. Please release yourself and allow God do His work in your hearts. So today we're going to be tackling what we refer to as the overbearing mother wound. I like to call it the smother mother wound, and I discussed that with you before. So tell me, why do I call it the smother mother wound, and how does that reflect what we're trying to explain today?
It's self-explanatory, sir. It's when some mothers smother their children, that literally choke them, choke them with what they call love.
What they call love.
What they call love, because for them, this is, I'm showing this child love. But at the end of the day, you choke the child, sometimes kill their initiative, kill, the child can't even do anything on their own, especially for boys, because we're men here, and all that. So the mother, in trying to, I love this, my son, I don't want anything to happen to him, and they overprotect, over everything for the child, and then the boy ends up becoming useless, becoming, many times feminized or aggressive. Well, we get to that, but basically, it's just to choke a boy with, love, to the point that the guy becomes useless.
Okay, now give us a technical definition of it. Give us a technical definition, because even in that technical definition, we'll be able to break out some things from it. Yeah.
Okay, so the overbearing mother wound is an unhealthy emotional relationship with mother that causes a son to either be threatened by the influence of women later in life, or to over-identify and become submissive to that influence. I'll take it again. The overbearing mother wound is an unhealthy emotional relationship with mother that causes a son to either be threatened by the influence of women later in life, or to over-identify and become submissive to that influence. So that's the definition of the overbearing mother wound. Yes.
That's beautiful. So it's unhealthy. If I heard what you just said, it's an unhealthy emotional relationship with the mother that causes a son to either be threatened by the influence of women later in life, or to over-identify and become submissive to that influence. So, what are some of the characteristics of this smother mother wound?
Okay, so there are a few characteristics of the wound. Number one is that it's not blatant. Sometimes it is, but most times it's very subtle. It's not as blatant as the absent father wound. Because it's not like, and many times it's not like they set out to do these things, set out to have those unhealthy relationships, but because them too have their own unresolved issues in their lives, and then they are carrying it over into their parenting style. So the first is that this wound is not blatant, usually very subtle.
So it's kind of it's nuanced. There's you reading between the line. No, it's not blatant. Blatant in the sense of coming out and pouring out.
Coming out like that.
So it's very subtle. Yes.
Very subtle. Yes. Then of course the second is that the wound is not of abuse or neglect. Actually, the wound is disguised as love and care. I say disguise, because in as much as the intention is good, but the way it's expressed creates something that is counterproductive.
So it's not absenteeism. It's not absenteeism. It's not neglect, but it's actually abuse. It's actually abuse.
Yes, a different kind of abuse.
It's disguised as love. So the mother thinks she's giving care and she's showing care. Yes. But you see, care can also be extended for selfish reasons.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's what a lot of people might not know. That you're giving attention to another person is not always an indication of your selflessness. Your willingness to sacrifice for another is not always because of magnanimity. It could very well be because you are trying to protect yourself. And there are a lot of people that have such instances. You know, you can think of some people who are willing, and people listening to us right now, there are people who are willing to do anything for relationships. They are willing to do anything. Sometimes you have situations where you have a girl, you know, who is in an abusive relationship. The boyfriend beats her up, or the husband beats her up. After beating her, he says he loves her. And then, you know, I see some girls who are in that kind of stranglehold, and then they just assume that somehow they're being emotionally abused, being abused physically and verbally and all otherwise. But in the end, they kind of assume that they try to convince themselves that what they are suffering in the hands of that man is a result of his love. So he loves me, that's why he beats me. You know, that kind of thing. I've seen some of those things before. And, you know, they now tend to sacrifice, in unquote. They want to sacrifice their resources, sacrifice their comfort, sacrifice their other relationships, sometimes even cut off from family members because of what they think they are building. But actually, they feel that they are building something which is illusory. They are building something, and in their own mindset, it is because of what they are building, they're sacrificing because of that love. But in reality, in many cases, it is that thing that tilts towards self-preservation, which enables people endure all forms of abuse because they want to preserve the status quo. There's something they gain from that relationship which possibly makes them feel in a certain way better than others make them feel. So you have situations where, like in the cases we've talked about, this guy beats up his girlfriend or beats up his wife on a regular basis. After beating her, he buys her flowers, says some sweet nothings in her ear and everything. And because of that so-called affection she's getting from the words that he speaks to her, and she thinks, you know, it's producing some sort of wholesomeness in her, she would rather abandon her personal security for this self-preservation without realizing she endangers herself. And we find sometimes some parents actually do that. That's the concept of this whole mother thing. Sometimes you have, like you spoke about now, a woman who, while growing up, possibly had her own issues, some complications that occurred in her own life, and she then extends it over to her parenting style. Maybe because she actually wants to protect her children from what she suffered, or there's an inadequacy she witnessed in the life of her own father. She doesn't want to see in her son, or maybe the husband, the man she married, or the man who gave her the child in the first place. So she wants to now, you know, and then when she does that, she finds that she's actually overcompensating. The person now goes the extra mile to compensate for a lack or a loss, right? The person tries to overcompensate for that and then goes the extra mile and begins to do things that actually end up inhibiting the progress and the growth of the person they actually believe they are trying to help. That's a very serious matter.
And so, you know, this is the reason. The third characteristic I want to say before I say what I want to say. This wound is not a problem of inattention or lack of attention. It's actually a problem of over attention. Over attention. You know, and all that. There's a woman I know. You know.
Yes.
Her son came to school in the University of Nigeria, Nsukka here.
Yes.
And all that. The guy fell ill, and this woman traveled all the way from Lagos. Came to Nsukka, went to her son's house. I was watching.
Now, if you're watching, you're not in Nigeria. You know, I'm in the United Kingdom, for example. I'm operating from the United Kingdom, where Pastor Ifeanyi is in Nigeria, in a university town called Nsukka. So, if you don't understand the distance, we're talking about several hundred kilometers from Lagos in the southwest of Nigeria to Nsukka in the southeast of Nigeria. All right, so several hundred kilometers, you know, separate both cities or both, Nsukka is a town. So the mother goes all the way to go and wash clothes,
That's
the
actually
laundry
that's
for her
actually
son.
608 kilometers.
608 kilometers.
608 kilometers.
So
I
she
just
travels
checked it.
608 kilometers to go and do laundry for her son. How old is this son? And by the way, we're referring to an undergraduate here. We're not talking
Yes,
about a primary school
the guy
pupil.
just no, the guy just entered his first year. He was in his first year in university. He was about 18, 19 at that time, if I remember correctly.
18 or 19 years of age. That is somebody who
18
is
and 19.
an adult, certified. He
18.
can vote, he can drive. In America, he can buy a gun, he can buy liquor and everything. His mother travels 608 kilometers
Kilometers
in
to
order
come
to wash his
wash
clothes, to do his
clothes.
laundry. Okay, please
Carry
continue.
him by the hand, even those first year things that people
Yes,
do to
yes,
go
yes,
here, go to admission, go
yes,
to record show,
yes, yes.
carry this guy, be moving from one faculty to the other. So that over attention, the things that the young man or the boy should do for himself, you find the mother doing it for them, and it creates a sense of dependency. It
And a
creates
sense
a
of
sense
entitlement.
entitlement, because there's another side of it. Also creates a sense of entitlement. And then you look at the young man, he was very lazy, very laid back, doesn't do, and everything is my mommy, my mommy, my mommy. And so, these things, they carry it into marriage. There are women that they are the ones that decide what happens in their son's house. When I hear these arguments, between my wife and my mother, where my mother, they should sit in front, or is it my wife? When I hear those kind of arguments, I know where it's coming from. It's this problem, because those women don't know where to draw the line. In their eyes, this boy never grows up. He's still that my boy. Still that my boy. In this particular case I just talked about, it was her only son. It was her only son, yes, and the husband wasn't around. So she turned the boy to both husband, both, everything. Her whole world was now centered around this guy. All that. So, you know, that's the
That reminds me of certain stories, and we hear of such things. I don't know if it was on this program where, I can't remember if it was on this program where we're having a conversation. I don't know, or where it was, who I was speaking with, having a conversation about this lady who, I think it was between Owerri and Port Harcourt. So there was this lady who, I think, the son went to school in one of the cities, either Owerri, and then, the son would travel, the mother would travel, go all the way from one city to the other every single weekend, bringing Sunday rice every single weekend. She would either do that or she would send the driver and everything. I can't remember with whom I had that conversation, but they would, go all the way from one city to the other city. This is an undergraduate. I think it was in Owerri, and his parents lived in Port Harcourt. The mother would send people they would send people to Owerri, to the market, to buy a rug, a carpet for him. They would measure his room, cut the carpet, and come and lay it for him. That's what they did. And they sent, and we see such instances. Sometimes you hear of, if I know, even family members, I can even tell you, I won't go deeper. I have relatives that I know about who, at some point, were always traveling every weekend to go home to eat their mommy's rice. And you look at the young man's life, and it's so unfortunate. And these things are supposedly disguised as love. And when I say supposedly, maybe I shouldn't say supposedly, because the mother actually most times means well, and she thinks she's actually loving. That's what she thinks she's doing. I've had instances where I've seen ladies who, have been so involved in their children's lives from the time the child was because of the need to compensate for something. They want to, pour out this love. They've sworn that what happened to them will not happen to their child. And then you see sometimes a woman has a little boy. And maybe sometimes, a particular case I can remember where this lady who had, she was trusting, she wanted to have a girl, for whatever reason. And she had made plans of what she's going to do with the girl and everything. And she had an unwanted pregnancy, and it turned out it was a boy. Now she mummied this boy, I don't know the circumstances of her. I didn't really understand what she came through. And I'm not in a position to judge anything, but there was obviously deprivation, a considerable amount of deprivation. She now turned this boy to a girl, plaiting his hair, doing all sorts of things, all the quote unquote plans she had for the little girl, she turned on the little boy. So instead of buying blue things, she would buy the pink things and everything. And then you now turn this child to an effeminate, it becomes effeminate from the time you feminize this little boy from the beginning, because you want him to, live that dream that you've always had in your life or in your heart. Now that child grows up, and then he's a mixed bag of all sorts of complexities, not even understanding his identity and understanding who exactly he's supposed to be. It's such a tragic thing. But before I speak about one or two references and instances we can get from the Bible, could you just give us an idea how this wound occurs? Maybe one or two, three, 4 points that we'll be able to note as to how this wound occurs in the first place.
Okay. There are two basic ways these things happen. Of course, primarily, the number one way this one occurs, is when there's an absent father.
Yes.
When the father is absent, the father is distant. And then, of course, the mother now tries to become both the father and the mother, you know. And,
Yeah.
um, and a lot of times, it feels like love, but or it's called love, yeah, but it feels more like control,
Mm,
because a
mm,
lot of times, because the father is not there, as I said,
mm,
and the
mm,
mother is trying to fill in the gap, she's
mm,
trying to
mm,
compensate, like you said,
mm,
for the
mm,
absence of man.
mm.
And so that's why, for example, whenever there's a Father's Day, I see some women that come out and they start posting to all the mothers that are fathers. You know, you see, that's where that problem came from. Because, as we said, there are things that a father needs to give the son. There are things. It takes a man to raise a boy to become a man. It takes a
Yeah.
man. There are things. It takes a man to call out the manhood inside a boy and show him how to become a man. So when the father is not there, the mother, in trying to now, you know, do this thing, begins to overdo it without knowing. Because, as I
Without
said,
knowing, she actually means well.
she knows well.
She means
It's not
well.
like they
Yeah.
are bad or anything. It's
Yes.
not like,
Yes.
no. I've seen these
Mm,
things over and over. So I don't know if you remember, it was many years ago. A young lady had been in a relationship, I think, for about 7 years, and she was telling the story herself. How um, the relationship, how the relationship ended. It was the guy's birthday. The guy asked her to buy
I
him
remember.
boxers.
I
Pretty much
remember.
herself.
I
You
remember.
know,
I remember.
and she
I
told the
remember. I
guy, he
remember.
was in his 20s, mid
Mm,
20s or something, or even late 20s. And of course, she refused to buy him. And the guy opened his mouth and said, if you don't buy it, my mommy will buy it for me and all that. And so that's where, so first it begins, the first cause of this wound is the absent or a distant dad, like we talked about. And then the mother, in trying to fill in that gap, overcompensates. You
mm.
know, yeah. The second way that this thing happens, I don't know if you want to say something about
No,
that.
no, no, no. Please, no, no. Please continue. I'll say something as soon as you're done with that. Yeah.
Okay. Then the second way this thing happens is because of the absent father, it now creates four kinds of moms.
Mm, mm,
Generally, sometimes even the father is present, but the first kind of mom that
mm,
creates this wound
mm,
is the ignorant mom.
mm,
They don't study. Sometimes I don't know why people think that parenting is something you can just figure out by yourself. You know, they don't get any knowledge, they don't get any training, they don't read any books, they don't study anything about parenting, you know. And then, so they are parenting out of ignorance, and most times they're parenting from a place of trauma, like we mentioned there, depending on how they grew up, depending
Yeah.
on the kind of father, whether their father was even there or their father wasn't there, because the only model really we have of parenting is what we grew up observing our parents
Yeah.
doing.
Most of
All
us,
right.
yes.
Most of us, yes, sir. So many times you hear the woman say, my mother did not do this, my mother did not kill me, not kill me. You know, those kind of statements. So the first group is the ignorant moms. You know, they don't really know what to do, and then try to grope in the dark. The second kind of moms that create this problem are the needy, hurting moms. They are hurting. Maybe the husband has left, the woman is still bitter, the woman is still angry, you know. And then to feel that emptiness, to feel that gap, to feel that need of having a husband in her life, she turns her son to a husband. You even see some of them calling their son a husband. They turn the guy to the husband. They try to get the guy to fill that gap that her husband, you know, is not feeling and all that. The third one, of course, which is an offshoot of the first two, is unwilling to release moms. You know, they don't know when to cut the umbilical cord and just let this child move on with their lives. They still to tell the child what to do. They still, you know, somebody made a statement said that in front of African mothers, children never grow up. You know, see a woman enters her son's house, is telling the woman what to cook in the kitchen, and she should arrange her kitchen. One was telling me that if down to the color of the bedspread they use on their bed is the mother-in-law that decides it, you know. So run both if you leave them, they can decide even both the number of children they have, the kind of car they drive, and all that. So they are
Yeah.
unwilling to release, you know, to release that guy into his manhood to become the man that he's supposed to be, you know. And then of course the fourth one is almost like the second one is the filling gaps moms, you know. They need to fill in those gaps that were left there by the father. So you know, so that's basically it. So
Yeah.
because the second one is connected to the first one, because the father is absent, you know, and then the mother in trying to fill in the gaps, in trying to compensate for the absence of a father, now begins to. And there's something I've noticed. A boy, like I notice it even in my house, even when
Yes.
my children were much younger. You see sometimes, especially the boys, you see them, maybe they're running around, playing, shouting, jumping. You see their mom sometimes stops. You know, they'll do small and then they continue. And then just calling the guy's name, just the father calls this person's name. The guy aligns
It lines
immediately.
up. It lines up immediately.
There's no argument. There's even
Yeah, it
no
lines up immediately.
lines up immediately. You know, I know the Heavenly Father provided those two people for a reason.
For
The Father,
balance.
yes, sir. Yes, the man can provide the emotional, the you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
the feeling side, like we've discussed before. The Father provides that, yes, both the rod and the staff, yes, but that firmness and that stability that helps a son, you know, become the kind of man that he needs to be.
And you
Thank
know,
you.
and you know, and you know, there's the research from the Fatherhood Institute. You know,
Yes, sir.
possibly we can project that later if time permits. You realize that the percentage of children that grow up with their fathers,
Mm,
as opposed to those that do not grow up with their fathers, the percentage of children that grow up with their fathers that are far more confident than
mm,
those who do not grow up with their
mm,
fathers is
mm.
is is is
Way high.
disproportionate. It's way higher. It's very, very high. You see, and these things are very important. You see, you know, we've said it so many times. A woman cannot be a father any more than a father can be a mother.
Yes, sir.
A mother cannot be a father any more than a father can be a mother. There is a reason for the balance.
Yes, sir.
There is a reason for the balance. God designed it that way. So we're going to give you prescriptions. If, for example, you're a mother listening to us right now, and then you have children that are being raised without their father, without the involvement of the father, we're going to show you the way out. We're going to help you. Please don't despair. Right? If you mean well for these children, please listen on, and then you will see what we're talking about. You see, I remember a story. All the stories are talking about the points where the mother is even, responsible for determining the color of the bed sheets that they use and all kinds of things. There's a particular story where, real life story, this guy marries his wife, and the wife he brought into his house. Now, his sisters, he has elder sisters that visit, about 2 or 3 elder sisters, along with the mother. In one particular instance, this guy comes back home. He's driving back, and lo and behold, his wife is kneeling down with her hands up. She's kneeling down, probably because she did not cook the food properly or something, and the elder sisters were not happy with what she did in the house, or what she did for the brother, or whatever it is. They were punishing her and she was kneeling down, and so this guy drives back from work and is walking into his household. I can imagine the joy in the wife's heart, seeing the guy. She probably was, I know my Redeemer lives. I know my Redeemer lives. And, she's busy in her heart thinking that her superstar knight in shining armor will burst in on the scene and start shouting, and what's the meaning of this? Why are you doing that? Da, 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 da. And then all of a sudden, she watches, to her utter consternation. This guy, the moment he sees her in that position, doesn't even look in her direction, just walks up straight to the room to rest. When the sisters were through with him, through with the wife, they released the wife. When they were through, they released the wife. So the wife had to go and report to the pastor. And when the pastor was asking, he called the man and said, is this true? Is it true that your elder sisters came to the house and they actually punished your wife, an adult woman you took from her father's house, and they punished her like a schoolgirl because of whatever the reason is? He said, Pastor, it's true. You don't know my sisters. You don't know my sisters. That in fact, my wife is very fortunate that my mother was not there too. You can imagine that. So in other words, if the mother were there, they would have increased the punishment, So
down,
yeah, possibly. So you see, these things are. That person is somebody who suffered that wound, and the wound is still very highly active. He has no business marrying anybody. He has no business having any wife. Now, possibly because of no fault of his, but because of the way he was raised. So there are 2 responses to this mother. 2 responses. Usually the first one is where the man becomes highly aggressive. Because you see, at some point, you notice that children, particularly the boys, I mean, look at my boy. I've got 3 girls and I've got 1 boy. Now, the boy came a little after his elder siblings. So there's a significant gap between him and the first ones. But even at his young age, he's 9 years old. He's going on 9. Or he's going on 9. He's going to be 9 in October. Now, from the time he was about 6, 7, he began to become very uncomfortable being naked in the presence of his sisters. And now, his mom wants to help him. My wife, his mom wants to help him have his bath sometimes. He'll say no. I would have to come down to investigate and be sure he's exercising his independence. He's exercising his independence. Ladies, you have to know when to let go. When that boy begins to need space, get out of there. You are helping his confidence. The fact that he cannot have his bath by himself properly, allow him learn on the job. Sometimes let him spend all the time required to learn on the job. Going in there, snatching the sponge from him and forcing him, you are destroying his self-esteem. I remember a story where, very humorous. Many years ago, I went visiting my parents, and then I was still in the university at the time, and I went visiting my parents, and then there was a neighbor's son who came in. He was a young boy. He was about 6 years old, 7 years old, not more than that. And he came in, and then he was panting, having run a little distance. And so I was talking to him. I called his name. I said, "Why are you breathing like that? Why are you like that? What's going on? You're out of breath." He said, "I ran up the stairs and I was very tired." I said, "Oh, wow." I said to him, "Is that how you are always feeling when you run up the stairs? Or is there somebody that pursued you?" He said, "No. When I was young, when I was young, when I was young, I could run up the stairs and I would not pant. But now," I looked at this boy, I couldn't believe my eyes. This boy was top 7 years old. He said, "When I was young." So you would see already the ego thing showing up. That's why he's a man. Potentially he's a man. The ego thing is, what some parents will try to do? Try to shut that thing down. And when they try to shut it down, what happens is, in some cases, that boy begins to build resentment. Depending on the kind of personality he is and the kind of personality he has, he begins to build resentment. And because he's not been given an opportunity to push it out, to express it, and they keep on smothering him. One day he will explode as a volcano. And once that volcano lets out its magma, it will never go back. He becomes aggressive.
Yes, sir.
He starts pushing things. You see mothers now wondering, what has he become? Why is he doing this? Oh, why is he rebellious? Why is he... The first sniff of independence, he breaks off completely. He breaks off completely and begins to do whatever he wants to do because he had been denied all this while. So usually what happens is that, such times you find a person who becomes dominant, controlling, manipulative towards women. That's one thing. He becomes fiercely independent because he has finally had a declaration of independence. He has now had his freedom from the colonial masters. So now, having tasted freedom, he will never allow that happen again. He becomes aggressive, pushing to the other extreme. So thereby, constituting another nuisance and causing another problem. Of course, but then you have some people who also, maybe because of their personality. Yes.
So please, can I say something? I'm sorry I interrupted. I just
it's all right. Yes.
Somebody was talking. The pastor was telling the story.
Yes.
Somebody. They came for cell meeting. Men's group. They came for cell meeting. They were talking, and then this guy was now talking, and the guy said, that for a woman to be submissive, you must beat her at least once every month. To keep a woman submissive, you must beat her at least once. And
he was saying it with conviction and authority.
Yes, sir. Born again, Springfield, talking. I don't know if I'll say Springfield, but talking. That for a woman to be truly submissive to her husband, you must beat her at least once every month. So these people are saying that they resent any female authority, anything, and they become very aggressive and very controlling towards it.
Sometimes it's because of the way their fathers taught them. Sometimes it's because of the way their fathers taught them.
This man said that's what his father taught him.
Because exactly, I also remember somebody was telling how his father told him. He said, women are like goats. These are his words. Women are like goats. If you want them to line up, you need to flog. So sometimes you have that. But then I've also seen people again who it's not their fathers. It's this mother matter. It's this mother who is overbearing, pushing and the boy is detesting this thing. He's detesting it. He grows up angry. He can't express himself. You see him, he's always looking angry because he's not giving freedom to operate. He's not giving the space he needs. Because of a lack of understanding of how genders operate. And you see, I see a lot of these woke liberal people trying to obfuscate the line and the distinction between boy and girl. It's one of the most demonic and diabolical things that people are involved in without understanding. Horribly wicked things. Boys and girls are very different. They will never be the same. Between the average male and the average female, there is a minimum of 3,700 biological, genetic, physiological, and physical differences. Minimum of 3,700. There's no point they will ever be the same. So you must learn how to take care of a boy as opposed to taking care of a girl. So if there are things that you want to do with your girls at a particular stage, and that could also backfire, because even that girl needs her father.
Yes, sir.
That girl will need a father to build the kind of confidence that she should build. That father that will love her, that father that will be stern with her, that father that will provide for her, yet that father that will discipline her.